I will turn my volume up. I will turn y'all's volume up, and there we go. Wah.
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 I don't know why we did that, but all right, we did it.
We went from THX to a bunch of
So ducks.
unenthusiastic ducks.
Yeah, very apathetic.
Quack.
To be fair, I did just put Kane through a fight with the 2E Shadow, almost mono and mono, with Cashew.
So bad.
So,
Just
anyway,
be happy it wasn't a 1E shadow.
yeah. I've come to respect the 2E Shadows a little bit because after running one, it does have a good damage resistance. So,
Yeah, that thing hurt me pretty bad, and I think it only hit me like twice.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, 2d6 of negative energy, negative damage. Yeah, but it doesn't drain levels or strength. So there you go. All right, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about, in our Around the Hearth, actually world building and world building in a micro and a macro scale, knowing the difference and knowing which one is best to build with in your campaigns. Before we start into that, let's go ahead and get announcements out of the way. First off, welcome to the End of Planar Crossroads, and welcome to our Around the Hearth. Welcome to our chats that allow us to interact with other channels. If you know a channel that you want to have on the chats with us, reach out to them or reach out to us or reach out to both. Let us know. We are currently, we currently have Tommy from Black Dragon Gaming, Kane from Black Dragon Gaming and End of Planar Crossroads. We have Levi from End of Planar Crossroads with this, and Black Dragon Gaming mainly with his gaming with Tommy.
Eli, the one who we have shared custody of.
We have shared custody of Levi. I am the custodian of Kane. I just loan him out to. I just loan him out to Black Dragon Gaming.
Makes me sound like a RPG prostitute. I mean,
So, like I said, I loan out Kane. Anyway, okay. Patreon is going on for both Black Dragon Gaming and the End of Planar Crossroads. For the End of Planar Crossroads, we have a goal of $50 a month. When we reach $50, the next goal is $100. At $50 a month, we will give away a rulebook of the winner's choice. At $100 a month, we will give away a rulebook of the winner's choice, as well as the Pathfinder Playtest Rulebook, Collector's Edition. So if you have a collection that you want to get that for, there you go. I don't know of any pushes that are going on for Black Dragon Gaming for their Patreon.
Right now actually, that's not entirely true. We are the next big goal, the next big hurdle that BBG wants to climb over is, honestly, it pertains a lot to what we're about to talk about here on the Around the Hearth. And I haven't told anybody about this. Well, I've told the goal, obviously, but
Breaking news.
Before I decided I wanted to be a YouTuber for a long time, I wanted to kickstart third-party books. I got it in my head that first I should do the YouTube thing and get people to know who I am and then start generating the content. And that's at $750 a month is when we'll start putting it out. I ask for extra money because I want to I have artists in my back pocket. I would like to pay for decent quality content. I don't want just here's a PDF. It's got overpowered stuff in it. Enjoy.
Right.
I want it to look good as well. And I also
art.
Yeah, exactly. And also we could print it and stuff. There's a lot of when we get there, we'll figure it out. But we're at just a shade under $600 a month on Patreon right now. That's at $750. So getting there.
Yeah, if you guys want to see some content from that, there you go.
Getting some games, get some builds, hang out on our Discord, everything in between.
Still working on the ironing out the stuff for the 400 one shot for our channel over here, and I think that's the last announcement. So let's get on in there. Let's get on in the game, or let's get on in the discussion. So for people that are trying to make sure we're trying to make sure we have the terminology right with everybody. When we're talking about world building, we're talking about constructing your campaign world. And when we're saying micro scale, that means a small scale building project of what your world is going to encompass, what your campaign is going to encompass. When we're talking about a macro scale, that means you understand as the GM that you've built this world in a big way. You have a lot of stuff known about your world, and you can start at either end to get the whole campaign fixed in the middle. And so we're going to kind of discuss that. So we can start off with micro world building, because that's usually where a lot of GMs start from my experience in talking with GMs. Is that something that you guys have found too, that you usually start at the smaller scale of, hey, this is a kingdom or this is a town that you're in or something like that?
Yeah, a lot of the time I find the world building starts on the micro side, or like if you're going to have macro concepts in your world building, they're usually just very vague, broad strokes. Like, this is what this country is like, or these countries are like this, or this is where the planet is, if you're doing like a sci-fi thing. And the rest of it will come in broad strokes later as you have time to develop it. And a lot of the time that happens because you're developing something that you're really interested in that you want to jump right into.
Hey, I had it turned down on my end so that it wasn't recording that.
It was so loud, though.
It was very loud.
Yeah, I had myself muted, thank you, on my recording. But no, go ahead and spoil it. I'll let them hear all the cat noise, all the cat yowling. Thanks. There we go.
Yes.
There we go.
The
Fine.
cat is so angry.
No,
Yeah.
it's not angry.
Well, it's something. I know what it is.
It's yeah, stuff.
Anyway,
Anywhere around it.
Okay. That's how I, for those that have watched the channel, started with Misadventures in the Southern Colony. It happens in a world that I have, but I hadn't built that part of the world yet, so I just decided, okay, I'm going to have a space small enough that Adonijah could have some adventures in. And he did.
Whatever happened to that, by the way? Is there going to be more misadventures?
I have not decided yet. I know that we had our in-person one-shot
We did?
that was
Sweet.
seemed to be fun for everyone, including you guys having to play with my son. So I appreciate you being nice.
I
And
didn't have a problem playing with Eddie. He was behaved.
Yeah.
he was behaved, if a little murder hobo-y.
Hey,
He's like
kids.
That's the only setting he has.
Kill everything.
Well, you'd be surprised. He can get really sneaky with his killings. But that was when he and his sister played when they were younger too. So anyway, that's not world building. Back on world building. So Tommy, you've built a world or two, or however many.
So many worlds forever.
So many N64 titles.
Yeah, that's what I do. My nostalgia lives. As far as building worlds on like the minor scale, I think that's the one oftentimes that will be more successful in like the tabletop role playing setting, with the exception of like say the Forgotten Realms, Eberron, Galarian, like you name it, a really popular like AAA RPG company, and they're going to put out this world, and once a month here's more lore. Oftentimes, I find that it's the case that like when a GM has this big, like humongous world, and like we, the players, will be here, oftentimes the painting in broad strokes is like it's kind of lost on players, or like players will come in with, for example, let's say all the drow in your setting are lawful good. Right, everybody who understands what a drow is from like the WotC and Pathfinder setting is going to come in and be like, "Hey, wait a minute! No, that's how that is." So a lot of times, like the big giant, the macro building, though it's fun and I certainly enjoy it, to be really, like, for lack of a better way to put it, I guess like self-serving, and oftentimes building on like the micro scale as far as like what your players are definitively going to get their hands on in game. That will often, for GMs that are like playing at a table every week, that will be more successful, especially if you let the players have a hand in it. Session zeros are very important, in my opinion. I didn't realize that until I started YouTubing, because we just kind of showed up and threw giant numbers at each other until the bad guys were dead, and haha. But
well, I'm glad that we've rubbed off on you from the end of the Crossroads.
yeah, you have. Not gonna lie. But what was I trying to say? When the players have more of a say in how the world works inherently, they're more invested in it, which kind of goes back to what we were talking about last time. The best way I ever saw that done was in a group. I think I told the story on my YouTube channel back in the day about how I went to a pickup Star Wars game that was 12, I think it was, people at 3 a.m. in somebody's house, and the GM's falling asleep and just kind of letting people throw dice at the board, and he's grabbing stuff and he's running with it. And bless him for that, for one, because I don't understand how that worked. But also, as we're like later on in a game at like 3-5, we're going town to town and stuff, and when it would come up, they're like, "Oh, what is going on in this town? What faction leads it?" And he'd roll a d4, and then he'd point at the table to someone else, and they'd call it, and it ended up being a vampire paladin, because it was again like 5 a.m, and somebody said, "Oh yes, the Holy Order of Planar," and I said, "Also they're vampires," and dude ran with it. Does that make sense? No. Vampires don't do the sun praising well, but it makes a world on a very small scale that your players can have their hands on, that you've created, often in that like shared narrative arena. Like intrinsically, that means everybody's going to have their hands on it and thus enjoy it more.
Okay.
Well, you could have a vampire anti-paladin of Planar. He's just a destruction god then.
Well,
drop all the important stuff.
You could also have like a sect of self-hating vampires who worship the sun and wish they could enjoy its glow. Ah!
Or they're vampires. They're people that have been unwillingly turned into vampires and hate that they have been, to build off of Levi's. And
Where's my sect of Damphir paladins that are just covered in spray tan?
they're all
you
orange
can find
from
them on
spray
the
tan.
Jersey Shore.
Yeah, they're all orange from spray tan.
It's
All right.
that episode of Jersey Shore where they watch Twilight and they get a little too excited about it.
Oh.
All right.
Yeah, I regret my words.
So, well, yeah. Well, you probably regret watching Jersey Shore, but so that's micro. Micro's a lot, like you said, it's a lot easier for me. Micro would include everything up to a kingdom, not really a continent. Once you start getting into continental scales, even though it's not macro in the grand scheme of things, you might start working into the idea of different kingdoms, and so you're having to build more than one. If you stay within one kingdom, you're pretty well in your micro scale. You got some towns, some territory, some places to explore, points of interest. And it also lets you decide whether this is a points of light type of campaign, which means there's a bunch of bad stuff in between the points of civilization, or you can decide if this is a pretty well civilized area and traveling back and forth is not so dangerous, and you can get back and forth without worrying too much about bandits and the like. And
sometimes like the points of light, like you were talking about, aren't necessarily like bandits or something. If you lived in if you were running a setting in a small area that happened to be really, really far north or really, really far south, it could be that the area in between settlements, or I suppose you could do this if you ran in the desert too. The area in between points of light, your safe zones, are just like inhospitably cold or hot, or like in the desert there's no water, and in the Arctic obviously there's no heat, or if you're on your 60 days of night rotation, there's no sun either.
I love survival settings so much, but I just have to say, is this a dark sun? This seems to be what we're going at.
Well, I guess, yeah, kind of. You could reference the Dark Sun setting from 3.5, which I've always wanted to play in, but I've never gotten the chance.
Oh, same.
Is that some kind of hint or something?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
I thought you didn't like Rusty Dagger Shanktown.
It's not overtly well because it's not Rusty Dagger Shanktown.
Yeah, it's not rusty at all. Obsidian dagger. You wish you were shanked because you'll die from the radiation in Suntown.
Any metal because it's incredibly rare, and my armor is made out of a beetle.
Yeah,
which is cool.
They call themselves Thrycreen. Excuse you.
I didn't. Well, I don't think I killed a Thrycreen and made armor out of him. I feel like that would get me in trouble.
Yeah, probably. Someone will not be happy.
Yeah, namely Thrycreen. They'd eat you. But they'd eat you anyway, so... anyway. Dark Sun, that's a points of light, and it fits well within the micro. And if you are wanting to build an entire continent, that is probably the best way to go while remaining micro in your world building, is to do the points of light setup. But there's also the opposite of that, which is macro universe building. And that's where that's where you're actually building, you got 2 or 3 kingdoms on this continent, or you have a whole world, or you have a whole universe, and if you're traveling the planes, you're going to be wanting to understand your world building on a macro scale. Because
if you wanted to adapt, say, Magic the Gathering into a tabletop game.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition?
Oh, yes, quite.
Or Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition that did that.
I'm not getting into that discussion.
Before we jump to the big ones, I have to say, though, and I think Levi can speak more to this than anyone because he's GM'd it, the Open Legend system seems to be like 110% the perfect system to in-game build the micro universe because of like rules as written, which is really weird, but like it's there.
Yeah. Okay, while I'm speaking to that, I'm gonna have to bring up one of the strangest Open Legend games I've been in, which was a play-by-post with no set GM.
Oh,
where
God.
There were like 20 of us, and we each, based on what our character story was, would actually take turns GMing based on what was going on. And like, it was a very cooperative story-based setup, but the idea being that your power is very much so directed by how you describe your character. There are numbers and stats in that. It's like a weird mix. Like, it's in the middle of like D&D and like Risus. And at every point you're going, let's see.
It sounds very much like D&D meets Fiasco.
Yeah.
That seems fair.
There's some of that vibe to it. But the point being that with everything that's going on in the rules as written, success with the twist, there's the idea that if you rolled, something should change in the story. And often enough, you'll ask the player how they think it would make sense for them to fail but something still happen. Or barely succeed, but how are they set back?
Or sometimes a bird will fall on your head and almost kill you dead.
Yeah, I didn't know what else to do right there. I was
that's fair enough. You're fine to do anything wrong. It was hilarious. In the one Open Legend game I played. If that's not a macro universe, I don't know what is.
A wimp absolutely crit the bejesus out of Tommy.
Exploding dice are really fun.
So I just had to make it. It's like, no, this is not this person succeeding on you. Fate decided today was not your day.
And so it did.
But anyway, the main point being...
We propped up Pitchfork and it goes right to your lungs.
Whoop.
But the main point being that, like, every role is supposed to change how the story is going. So oftentimes, micro world building will happen mid-game because it has to.
It sounds a little bit like the Powered by the Apocalypse systems.
Like Savage Worlds?
Yeah, Savage Worlds or Monster of the Week or
Oh no,
Yeah,
monster.
any
Okay.
of the systems that you roll 2d6 and add a modifier.
Kind of. Except there are no modifiers. There are only more dice.
Yeah.
Only more dice.
And if you
Which-
roll the max number on any die, you re-roll it and add it again.
Yeah, I've been fascinated by exploding dice and by the Open Legend system, but I have not played in it yet. So,
The math behind it is real fun.
It is.
but I
Send
can
him
see
out
how that.
Too, Adam, I should give you the Discord link for Open Legend.
Okay, you can give me the Discord link, and I wouldn't mind being part of that. I cannot guarantee I would do any kind of play-by-post thing because I would probably not
They
do
also
that.
have actual games.
Okay, fair enough. So, and if he gives it to me, I can probably put that in the link down below, the description down below. As far as what you guys are saying though about that world building happening in game, I think there's actually a place for that in micro and macro building. You definitely need unless you have complete player buy-in for what they know is a railroad campaign, you really shouldn't.
Harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, sir.
You probably should not do a micro or macro building thing of your world building because they're gonna you shouldn't include them at all in it. If it's all about that, if it's all about you and the story you're telling. If, however, you are facilitating a story and they literally can change the universe around them, which they really should, that's kind of why we play games. If you didn't want to influence the world, you should probably go read your own, make your own adventure book or a graphic novel of some kind. Visual novel of some kind that you put on Steam.
If your goal was to run your friends through your fan fiction, you'd be better off just writing your fan fiction.
Yeah, and making it a choose your own Sonic boner. I don't know. Anyway,
Sonic boner. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, that's what I've heard about.
Yeah,
That's what I have heard. That's what I have heard about the Sonic fan base. But anyway,
Okay, just making sure. I don't think I've ever heard Adam use the word boner before, and
Yeah.
I have.
It's a medical thing.
Well, fine.
I believe medically it's referred to as an erection.
A blue hedgehog erection. I don't care. Anyway,
An asphyxiating hedgehog penis.
No, that's something different.
Yeah, it really is.
But like we said, if you're building big or building small, your players should be able to influence the world. Now, if they're going to influence the world in such a way that's going to change big things, like if you're trying to tell a big story, a cosmic story, then you're going to need to do a little bit of macro building because they're going to need to know what it starts as and what it finishes as. You're going to need to know how this adventure is starting, what point in the cosmos are they starting at, and where are they finishing, and they're going to decide how it's different at the end. For a micro, that's a lot easier. They could depose a mayor and then have to decide if they're going to take over control of the town, or if they're going to have somebody get elected, or if they're going to pick someone to be mayor. What is that going to do with the local lord? What is that going to do with the local kingdom? So you can still keep it within a kingdom, but those things are things that might come up. And the beauty of micro building is that they can come up in between sessions. Like, you can figure that out in between a session instead of having that figured out before every single session ever starts. I encourage people not to be intimidated by macro building, though, because you can still do something similar to that. Because what the players don't know behind the screen, they don't know at all. And if you don't know and you ask them, well, what do you think? Or how is that with you and what your character's doing? Where is your character from? When I macro built Sasnak Ra, Sasnak Ra is the planet that everything happens on in my games. But it is not overbuilt. It is not built to the point where it cannot be changed or muted, or it is not immutable. Because there was not a specific place for horse lords until Tommy's character Octarian wanted to be a horse lord. There was not a specific place for gray paladins, lawful neutral paladins, until in our very first game, Joel wanted to play Real, a lawful neutral paladin of Pharasma, which is really an oversight on Paizo's part. I almost said Bethesda. Really an oversight on Paizo's part. Paizo, it's bad that you're starting to remind me of Bethesda. Because Pharasma probably needed a paladin code earlier.
You know, I tend to agree. I really do. As much as she is the anti-zombie and everything much worse than zombies. Yeah, of all the non-LGs to have paladins, it should be Pharasma.
Yeah. But that wasn't there, so we made one. It wasn't there for good necromancy, so we decided that there was. And we made that actually a connection between two individuals. On Sasnak Ra, there is an order of paladins, and they are guardians over what is called the Order of the Black Rose, which is an order of necromancers that actually use necromancy to allow penance for souls that have died and don't want to go to hell and can choose to take penance.
And so they serve soul shepherds than necromancers.
Right. So there you go.
And classic white necromancer.
Yeah, and we worked it out like that. And that was world building, and it was not something that I had planned for because I wasn't thinking that way. I wasn't trying to overthink my campaign because I wanted my players to let me know what they wanted to play. And then I set them on a railroad. But not exactly.
Well, you also had to make a gang full of Tango. And well, I mean, really, that played in for both me and
Jonathan,
Joel, or Alex.
John's character.
Jonathan is someone you've never met.
Fair.
So. Fortunately, he had to leave us.
Yeah.
Early on.
So there's that way to build. Before we get into what might be best for us individuals game, and we give kind of examples for each type of game, what is everybody's preferred type of world building? How do they prefer to build?
If someone else wants to go first, they can go.
For me, I prefer it depends on my players. It truly does, because again, like I said, a lot of times your world building is ultimately really, 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 really self-serve, which is kind of part of the reason. Like all of the games I've ever GM'd, short of Doomsday Dawn, since BDG have been N64 games, because I'm going to build this big, fancy, intricate world, and on deaf ears it doth fall. So usually for me, it's the micro building. It's what will affect your character right now, because even from a role playing point of view, there might be something I really like about my world that the party just couldn't care less about, because that's the characters they are. But also there's a bit of and I had to do this in Lordly Caliber because one of our players was bound and determined that he wanted to play a necromancer, and on Galarian that's a universal poo-poo who cannot necromancy without offending pretty much every paladin god plus Pharasma. It's a universal evil act. So where macro, the big here is everything I have, and micro, the center of the Venn diagram, if you will. Things along the lines of universally held truths in the world, is necromancy an evil action? How I got around it was I had a character whose player is Asatrue, and wanted to, as always, is making Norse characters, which I think is sweet. So when we're playing Ogre Battle 64 and it's the end of the world, man, that cat Adam was muted again. No.
Yes, I was. I was muted again. You guys shut up. You just don't talk. Don't talk about my pussycat.
But like, you guys can't hear it probably, but that cat is losing its goddamn mind on his
Yeah,
end.
they hear it when I have to unmute and answer you guys about talking about my cat.
Well, anyway, what I did was in Norse mythology, and I'm not going to vomit giant Swedish words at you. We'll get Alex for that. But there's a boat that is populated by the dead, and they will sail. I think that's actually the character that Alex put forward in Broken Universe, was the driver of the boat that will vomit zombies in Ragnarok. And so we get around the necromancy is evil clause by when people are animating the dead, they are depopulating the boat. And like there are other like several universally held in the middle of this and that truth. Like another good example is in my intrigue game that I should be editing more of, and I'll get to it when I can. One of the things I wanted to set out, because that's where lots of zombie apocalypse things, and I wanted to set a precedent that you couldn't snap your fingers and get rid of this with powerful divine magic. So to mitigate micro and macro, it's a universally held truth in that world that restoration is miracle level magic, and anything stronger than that is strictly unheard of. Now, one of my players is an investigator, so eventually that player is going to have access to the most powerful magic in the setting.
A miracle in a bottle. A miracle in a bottle.
Yeah, exactly. And it's little stuff like that you get to build your own setting, but at the same time, like you're not vomiting lore at your players, and it's always going to be directly relevant to them. So if I had to answer, it would be like micro plus, I guess.
Micro plus.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Kane, or you, Levi?
I'll probably be shorter, so I'll go first. And like, I would think of Tommy's as like micro with like macro flavoring.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
If we start off on food analogies, it's just going to get out of hand. We're going to put way too many toppings on.
Okay, but honestly, I have to pretty well agree. I like having just enough of a macro framework that before it starts, I can give like the players a basic idea of what all exists. Obviously not the specifics, but I just run almost entirely with what's happening in the game. So like having too much macro is too constricting for how I play. So I'm way more micro.
Okay. And Kane?
I like to start with a micro base and then a nice demi-glaze of macro on top with some intrigue sauce for flavor. Now,
intrigue sauce.
I'm a big fan of micro world building. I'm a big fan of, I've probably said this several times before, but I really like urban campaigns, things that are set in like a big city or in like a couple of cities that are relatively close to each other. Because, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm a city kid and that's I relate to that more readily. But I'm a
city folk.
Dang city folk.
Dang city folk indeed.
I've always been sort of a bigger fan of the like being more involved in small set pieces, like cities. And one thing that's actually similar to the points of light setting that we talked about earlier, that I've definitely been guilty of when I want to make the world feel bigger than it actually is something I've always referred to as cardboard scenery, which was something that sort of occurred when I was running a Favor Ode. I moved you guys basically from one end of the country to the other, or like from halfway down the country up near the top, and you guys had to travel that distance and then stop in the middle at that halfway place. But like a lot of that just sort of transpired, and I described it to you, and there was some nuance, and then you went, and then like that was it. And it's like a little thing that maybe makes the world seem larger than it actually is, because the only things I had written were some stuff for the Rockwell Company and then Clay Witch. And then everything in between was just for lack of a better term, bullshit. Not.
No,
Well-
that's fair. Cardboard scenery goes by really fast when you're on a cart going 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I can agree with what Kane's saying. Unfortunately, I seem to be the odd man out. I like to macro build first, but in a similar way that Levi was saying, I have a macro build that has a framework of what I'm doing, but it is injected with micro building along with that, and that comes along with having. I'm the GM of the group, so I'm the one that's running anyway. So I have to know what's going on anyway. And Tommy's right, there is a bit of self-service to it, but it's not like you're serving yourself necessarily when you're doing that. Don't consider it selfish to know what is happening in your world. It's self-service in the way that that setting is serving itself. So what I mean by that is I have a framework, I have a world. I know what's in the world, and I know generally where everything is. That doesn't mean I know that every micro thing that's in there. And that's where the players come in. They build the micro, and I handle the macro. And an exception to this is Kelligoth and the stuff that happened beforehand. The Anulami Empire is custom built, and Port Marla is pretty well itself its own thing. But in general, they built the micro, and really, Port Marla only came about as a major port city because we needed one for Ignatius, and we needed something. Ignatius wanted to come from a port town because that's where we were going, and it made sense for him to go back there and to take Johnson and his cart along with him, and to get back to that. And there was
Sell all my drugs.
yeah, sell all your drugs, because you were a pharmacist. But
Yeah, food all over his apron.
They were good drugs. They weren't bad drugs.
with his stained apron.
I think I still have that in my...
Got to get over the stains I put on that character. I'm never making another character portrait with stains on it.
I still have that actually in my downloads folder. I don't know why I have yet to delete it, but it's there. The
Because
full,
it's too beautiful.
All of Ignatius from tree raising. That's why that's there. Okay.
Yeah. But
So
all that
he's
happened.
so broad.
He was. But
He was a big boy.
I am Ignatius.
But that all was built, that micro stuff was built because of the players. So I built the macro world. I know what happens in the planes because I had to do that with what was going on with Real and Samus. So I knew what was going on in the planes. I knew that not all necromancy is evil. And I'm not exactly a fan of the idea of all necromancy being evil anyway, because you're manipulating life energy. But that's another discussion.
Hey man, in the playtest, all the heal spells had the necromancy description now.
That's right, and they aptly should. But in that, away from that, and getting back to world building, even though that does kind of apply to world building, that is Paizo changing its own lore.
And you gotta do that sometimes. Sometimes you gotta, like, at the risk of sounding like I like the Disney Star Wars and the Disney Marvel, sometimes you gotta reboot it. Sometimes you gotta kick it in the butt and like see where it lands.
Sure. You guys keep telling yourself that. Keep
I
telling
do like
yourself
Disney
that, Paizo.
Marvel. I'll fight you.
Good.
I don't
come back down here in the summer and you can try to fight me, but you'll rapidly wear yourself out from the humidity.
Oh, so I'm gonna get a hold of you, man.
But
That's probably true.
with
I'll drown both of us.
with the macro being there, the characters were able to inform what was happening in the micro. I knew what was going on in Kelligoth. I know Kelligoth's history. Kelligoth has a long history, and I only know it, because I need to know it. It's fun for me to know it. This is not something that you should even expect your characters to know. You shouldn't expect your characters to know when the Great War was. They know that it happened. That's fine. You shouldn't expect them to know that there was such a place as that Atlantis was a real thing, that it was them that brought down the cataclysm for their arrogance, supposedly. Who knows? They don't even know. It does make it. I will say this: if you're going to do a time travel type setup in your games, make sure that you know what's going on in your world at both of those times and how that will influence the other. Because I've done it successfully so far in at least one instance in the campaign that I've done before, and I'm doing it hopefully successfully in this campaign with Broken Universe. You'd have to talk to Kane to know if I'm doing this.
I'm waiting for an instant to tell Zolk that Thule is going to screw him over in the long run.
Well, they've probably been on that boat for a long time, considering the flashbacks that you saw this time. Spoilers for season 10. Quite literally. But that's beside the point. I don't know if Kane remembers the time travel situation that happened in Beginnings and Endings of Many a Great Hero. But what I did is I kind of wanted to allude to them that this place called the Blighted Lands that had a bunch of magical stuff going on in it. It was great magical storms and all that type of stuff was constantly happening there, and you could not live there because of summoning lightning would happen, and you just instantly an Oni would appear, or some weird, strange thing would be summoned from another plane. So you couldn't live there. But how did that happen? And so I didn't tell them how it happened. I showed them how it happened. And if you have built macro enough that your micro can be understood, and you put them together, which is, I think, what we're all leading to, the idea that we're all thinking that you can have both. You don't have to have one or the other.
It really depends on how much free time you have in your hands.
Accurate.
Yeah. You are able to make it to where that type of storytelling is possible. That storm happened, and they went back and they saw it before that, and they got to meet Razzle Bamdoozle Lazamab the first. Razzle Bamdoozle Thomas and Lazamab, or something like that.
Oh,
Had
yeah,
like
I
4
wasn't
names.
there for those sessions. That was during the weeks I was gone. You turned me into a squirrel.
That's right. I turned him into a squirrel. It wasn't my fault. You drank Johnson's brew. That was your fault.
No.
But all that showing of what could happen was done in time travel. I could only do that because I understood where I was taking them in time. So I think if you're going to do time travel, you need to have built both micro and macro of what you're doing. Think about, or at least micro in both of the places that you're going in time.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if anybody else has done time travel in theirs.
Not well. The last time I was in a game that had time travel, I just multi-hauled my way into leaving my my Imperial Dragon Wormling, who was serving as an improved familiar, back in time for a while somewhere safe, and then now my chosen one's familiar is now a Great Worm, and that was fun. I had Big Dragon.
The big dragon.
It would have been
Not small
awful
dragon.
lonely for your little dragon. I would have had him go insane or something.
He got left in Apara for 1,000 years, and he was writing calligraphy because we were playing out. That was my samurai, and that was suddenly 1,000 years later. Calligraphy is very popular in the Roman Empire. Also, here's a dragon monster. But one thing I will say about macro building, and like as much as I dog on it, like if that's what you enjoy, you should do it. That's at the end of the day, we're here to like it's our escapism. We're trying to have fun, damn it. You know what I mean? But also, like even if you have to just pull it out of your butt with improvisation, have that stuff ready for players who, and again, session 0 is key. want to know more stuff about the world. I've had a lot of players in my day, like especially the wizards, who like their adventure-y purpose is to gather knowledge. And like Joe, when Joe isn't playing gigantic barbaric warrior culture boys, much like I do, he's playing explorer types, and we want to know that stuff. It will always bother me, just this much, when we did Storval Deep in Rune Lords, that I have no idea why the dam looks like Castle Grayskull, and I have no ability. And like, that's an example of where you, the GM, if you're playing in Berzia, you have the Verzian lore, Google it. But if it's your own setting and you've come up with an idea that sounds cool, and suddenly your players are asking why, it's good to have that knowledge on hand, and that's where like macro building can help you out.
Oh, and for the love of God, if you have that knowledge, write it down.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Don't forget it.
Yeah,
Yes, you do.
it's usually good if you're macro building, write stuff down, or have it in such a way that you remember it because you're remembering something else. Tie it to another memory, so that it cascades into it. Because otherwise, you will forget stuff.
There are just like swaths of this setting document I'm looking at right now that I've had to just like dig through old Discord conversations and text threads to find like pieces of lore that I've mentioned once that I thought were super cool and then forgot about like 5 hours later.
You and your memory.
It's real bad. Also, it can how much macro world building you have to do can also depend pretty heavily on how much or how little you steal.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone when world building, like you're gonna take inspiration from other things, and some things like it is your right as the progenitor of this world to just wholesale, like just whole cloth rip shit off. So long as it's, if you're thinking of publishing it, so long as it's not copyrighted material you're ripping off, it doesn't really matter. Because I mean,
that's all my campaigns.
Yeah,
can't publish them. We'll put them on the channel. But it's Ogre Battle 64, Aiden Chronicles the first page, and all of the Resident Evils doing this to make a new one.
I don't think we want to see any of the Resident Evils doing that. I'm just saying. That's some nasty stuff right there. Not into that type of necrophilia type stuff. We'll see what you're doing.
Hands, you perverts. You perverted boys. That's what you are.
But don't kill yourself, Kane. We need you for games.
Time of use, I suppose.
I have found that of the three of us, I think it's either me or Kane that has the most experience building original things rather than converting things, if I'm remembering right. Because
mine was also kind of like group project-y. There's chunks of this document I didn't write myself.
Gigantic Google Doc. Another good thing for macro building is, and I'm kind of, though Kazuha and Francis had their own, they just never got to it. I'm really good as a GM at I'll really get enamored with 1 or 2 or 3 characters at my table, and so the story will turn to them before it'll turn to someone else's, their backstory and stuff. But a backstory builds the universe. It informs it. And like Adam is saying, macro to micro, it's that same way. And again, it's at the table, it's about what's going to impact your players, and nothing will impact them more, like we said, in world building, something that literally affects them. And if it can inform the world so much, the better. For example, Emmy's Psychic Sorcerer. I have no reason why I latched on to Xandu. I cannot quantify any of it, but I really liked that character. And so there's a lot of that alternate Galarian where all the Verizians are bits of dream recreated and made flesh, much like Xandu was as a weapon. And then Xandu releases them, and now there's a whole nationality of people are trying to figure out, they're all having existential crises at once, basically. Why?
Which for me, I mean, I as a GM, I'm like, that's really complicated, Tommy. You're not thinking this through, Tommy. It's making it my brain, Tommy.
It's not like we would have dealt with in every individual. That's macro world building.
Yeah, that's
each individual existential crises. And maybe this is just because I got done watching a bunch of wisecrack videos about Rick and Morty before coming up to do this. But it informs the world. It's important to a character, and like you don't have to have an idea 100%. If you have an idea 100%, you can't. It was Bruce Lee that'd be like water. It's like that. If you can't move it as well in response to player actions or like even your own whims creatively, as if it's like set to like 90%, and then like you decide, yeah, it'd be really cool. Let's kill their family. Or like,
well, I mean, you can do that. You can still do that.
You can. You can always kill families. That's welcome to Pathfinder.
Welcome to Tabletop, where we kill families.
That was like a whole. You just explained Ignatius's character in one sentence.
Hey, I didn't kill your families.
We're gonna sell your wife into slavery, and you're gonna spend the entire campaign getting her back.
That was your fault. You said that she was gone, and I was like,
"I gotten her back before the end."
You did, kind of post-credit scene. But
an epilogue.
Epilogue. Hey, epilogues are useful. For what I was going for with, got her. Stinking cat. With what we were going for, we kind of discussed what we liked, and we've got about 8 minutes to throw out some types of games, and then put our recommendation forward on whether you should micro or macro build it. So, first type of game, you've got some new players, and you're a new GM, and you're wanting to give them a taste of what Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, Open Legend, whatever tabletop preference you have. You're trying to give them a taste of that type of game. Suggestions for that?
Okay. So I'm a GM who's experienced the whole squad is new, and it's on me to teach them.
Well, no. New GM, new game. New GM, new players.
So everyone is entirely 100% new to the table?
Pretty much.
And in that case, it's do whatever feels right, to be honest with you, because then I definitely remember my days of going to the Walmart and getting a ruler, and I can't draw in a straight line with a ruler to save my life, and drawing a grid on a poster board with a Sharpie, and that was a town. And like just running with it. And did I have answers for things? No. I also got some colored pencils and an 8.5 by 11 and made a little country map of a country that didn't have a name. We ended up calling it Brokenia because it was a 3.5 game, and 3.5 beats are fair and balanced is why. But I honestly, it's do whatever makes you feel good. It's brand new for you.
Straight face.
What?
3.5 feet are fair and balanced.
Robillars, Gambit, Leap Attack.
Snowflake,
Shock Trooper.
Yeah. Oh, Shock Trooper.
Anyway, I mean, I think that'll probably generally lead to micro, because you need enough of a world for players to exist at a spot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
What about you, Kane?
I would suggest micro and points of life. Did you have something else to say, Levi?
If I did, I already lost it, so it must not have been important.
Oh, you.
I also would lean.
I would suggest micro and points of light sort of thing. Like focus on a fistful of small things that you can develop deeply enough to have answers to questions without having to worry about being able to explain a country's history to them.
Yeah. Don't do Kelligoth right off the bat. As someone who did Kelligoth, don't do Kelligoth right off the bat. I also lean micro for that. I'd even venture to say that you may just want to run a module or take inspiration from modules. That's another thing. You guys don't worry about using cliches. That was actually suggested from the D6 damage Discord. Don't be afraid to take in some cliches, because cliches are cliches for a reason. Enjoy them. Have fun with them. The dwarf that hates the elf. Well, that's a cliche, but it's fun.
It can be fun, so long as your players aren't a dick about it.
Yeah. the
I will
door,
attack every elf I see because I'm a racist.
or
And then that player is banned.
or the or
Well, all right, you can do that at someone else's table.
Yeah. That's the compromise. Be horrible over there.
So that's an option. You take in the micro. I would go micro if I was a new DM, and I did when I was a new DM. The very first thing I run was very micro. They met somebody in a tavern because I was like, that's very cliche, and it works. The very first game I ran was that's where they met. They went off to get a MacGuffin, very cliche but appropriate, and then their employer was the bad guy all along, and that was cliche, but it worked. And
I'm just realizing now I've been in this campaign.
yes, that was a campaign you were in. And that was actually the first.
I've been in that campaign more than once, and I fell for it both times.
I make no I make no claims about the perceptiveness of my players, but
Oh no, the first time was Connor running it. The second time was you, and I'm angry now that I fell for it twice.
the third time was Fallout Fort Smith.
Yeah, but I was playing into the cliche that time.
That's fair. He was. But yeah, going with something like that when you're new is a good idea. And don't be afraid to then take and lift those things that you had happen in that timeline and then move them to something that you're making that you are macro building for. Because that's an option. That's what I did. It worked. People enjoyed it. If they enjoyed it, it's not bad.
Absolutely.
Second scenario, unless anybody has something specific.
I was just going to say something. If you're trying to jumpstart something on the micro, they were just talking about this, I think, on a podcast called Pathfinder Academy. If you want to use something in your campaign from a piece of popular media that your players aren't familiar with, like
N64 games.
like N64 games. Or T the Writer did a story about running a labyrinth with a bunch of Xenobites in it because his players weren't familiar with the Hellraiser series.
Mm.
Those are called chitons for us.
Well, yeah, that's true. But he was running them like Hellraiser, and he had the puzzle box, and like the whole cloth. He was just taking things out of the movie and being like, "We have such things to show you."
That is a good line. I mean, that's a good line. But yeah.
Yeah, if you just need to jumpstart something, and like especially if your players aren't familiar with it, like they're not going to be able to call you with it. And even if they are familiar with it, if you vague it up enough with things in game, they may just not pick up on it.
Yeah, just change some names around, change alignments, like turn your chitons into angels, and they have such things to show you. And that's a weird image, but there you go, you did it. It's the whole cloth with a different turkey on top of it.
Maybe you're playing an evil campaign, and they're Imperials, and they're kind of dicks.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're Imperials.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway.
They're chaotic good. They're gonna make you good by any means necessary.
Yeah.
So he's gonna pierce the crap out of you first.
So here's something else then. Here's another scenario. You have a game master who's experienced, but his players are not. She, whichever one, is well experienced, but the players are not. So that's something that I think we all can agree is a bit more open. You need to fill out your people, fill out your players. Would be my suggestion. See what they want, see what they're interested in playing, and that's where you can start to get into this larger world building if you're wanting to. That's really good for a kingdom, from my experience. Or you could go a world, but probably a kingdom is really good for the new players. It's large enough and has enough lore without necessarily being too big to bother with learning. At least that's my recommendation. What about you guys?
I would say that scenario is a very important one as someone who has twice in his life. Once because they happened to be in the same house as someone else who was playing, and once because I didn't have a Pathfinder group for a while, and I got back with Piss Kicker's player over at Greenwich Colonies when he was GMing for a couple of high school kids at an LGS or somebody's little cousin who was like 11, 12 years old. Oftentimes, you, the GM who's more experienced, when like you have a squad that knows nothing about the game, it's a really, really important environment to live in because your actions as a GM make or break the future of the hobby on a micro level, to be real meta about the conversation. Because like your setting, your encounters, your this, that, and the third will directly influence whether or not these people return for future games with you, seek to do it themselves, seek to go to like an adventure league or PFS, or like continue to consume the D20 and all that its power is. So a lot of times I agree with Adam. You gotta feel your crowd. If there's people that really want to see that giant world building and have a million questions to ask and stuff, then you better get on it. You better make you a big world for these players. But oftentimes, I think those players can be just as satisfied with, like, here's where you are, here's a map, boom. And it'd be more on, like, a micro level, but even more so, the, like, micro with flavor for what those players want. Because, like, if that's their first character, there's a reason I recycle Mahariel as much as I do. Because, like, I don't really care for the build, but, well, that's a lie. I enjoy the build. But he was also my first character. And so, like, when I need to go to, when I'm going to join a pickup group, okay, here's my first. And you, the GM, have the ability to do that for someone else. So, yeah, micro with a little bit of flavor, unless they want macro, in which case, like, do it. It behooves you to do it.
Man, I wish my first character had a better name than what it does.
Yeah.
Is that something you'd want to share right now, or are you gonna?
Yeah, I don't care. I'm
waiting.
Laughed at anyways. I don't ever want to go to a pickup game and be like, yes, I've come today with my dwarven fighter Throckbeard, which is, I think, about the worst name ever imagined by a human being.
Oh, I thought it was going to be something really heinous. But...
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like coarse. It was just stupid. Like, it was a bad name, objectively speaking. Throckbeard? Are you shitting me?
Throckbeard.
I mean, it sounds like an avant-garde metal band about, like,
it sounds like a really bad like blackened folk metal band from somewhere in Europe that in their basement and spent $20 for a setup and does blast beats into really bad vocal mics.
Oh.
So there's your next character, a bad bard.
Or that they call those skulls.
Already
in Pathfinder First Edition. My name's Cashew Throckbeard.
All right. Well, Levi, do you have any suggestions for a very experienced individual running for some newbies?
I didn't even say anything. I just said that I had a dwarf with a bad name.
Well, get on it then. We're over time already.
You have given up your right to speak, Throckbeard.
Damn it. All right. I was just going to say, like, if you're an experienced GM and you're playing for a bunch of people who are new, you have a lot of experience to lean on, and I would say to lean on that experience. You have tried and true, you have proven methods for which you use to generate character buy-in in a setting, and a lot of the time I feel like with new players, you can present them with something that you already know how to do well, and there will be some immediate buy-in with that because you're capable of giving them that at a higher than normal level of proficiency and presentation. If they end up wanting something else, you should, again, be able to rely on that experience to shift gears. But initially, at least, I would say to sort of like lean into what you're good at, because that'll, assuming you're lucky and they don't just like right angle into uncharted territory into your cardboard scenery.
It's a totally different connotation than driving a car in Hollywood and just props are all gone. That's out of 5. That's what that is.
Yeah, assuming they don't just beginning off-roading it as soon as humanly possible. You should, I mean, unless that's what you're good at. then you should be fine.
Indeed. All right, Levi. Anything you would have a suggestion for on that?
I was just gonna say that definitely, like, the core theme that we've been all going at here is put extra work to cater it towards the players, regardless of what it is. But in this case, like, extra macro can't hurt. Like, if that's not what they want, you don't focus on it. But, like, if you want to have a world to come back to and whatnot, having the extra macro work put in won't in any way hinder you. If your players don't want to engage with that, you just don't have to make them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you can always reuse the world, and then you can take the little things that they end up adding to your world and use it again later or implement it.
Yeah. All right then. I think that's pretty good. And I think that's a good place to stop for now. Next time, we'll talk about something else regarding world building, unless there is another update for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Then we will voice our opinions.
So
And you-
put it on.
Yes, and you can voice your own opinions in the comment section below, ladies and gentlemen.
Boom.
So, let us know if there's anything you'd like to add to this. You can leave your questions, comments, or observations in the appropriate places. Have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
Well, who was that? Was that Kane?
Yes.
This content was made possible by the generous support of patrons and travelers like you. Thank you.